After being rejected by the Galactic Council, humanity built a mighty empire. Part 1. Warlord Tavrek of the Korath turned his fleet around. So did Mindspeaker Isin of the Senva. Even Imperator Veshkor of the Drakyun, the most ruthless dreadnought commander in the outer spiral, knew better than to close the distance. When a human convoy appeared on long-range scans, the Concord's most feared admirals ran, not because they lacked firepower, not because they lacked numbers, but because engaging a human fleet wasn't a battle. It was a transaction. Claude's response was interrupted. Try again to run code, enable code execution and file creation in settings capabilities. You said. Approved 1022. After being rejected by the Galactic Council, humanity built a mighty empire. A memoir dictated by Kethvun Sa, chief archivist of the Vilthari repository, in the final year of his service. Part 1. The Hook. Warlord Tavrek of the Korath turned his fleet around. So did Mindspeaker Isin of the Senva. Even Imperator Veshkor of the Drakyun, the most ruthless dreadnought commander in the outer spiral, knew better than to close the distance. When a human convoy appeared on long-range scans, the Concord's most feared admirals ran. Not because they lacked firepower, not because they lacked numbers, but because engaging a human fleet wasn't a battle. It was a transaction you could not afford to enter. These were the same humans the Council had dismissed, the same species the Concord of Nine had labeled evolutionarily premature in a vote that took less than 4 minutes. The same applicants whose membership petition was filed away in a sub-level archive on the Council homeworld and forgotten for 90 standard years. For over 14,000 years, the Concord of Nine ruled the galaxy with absolute procedural authority. 9 ancient species, 9 votes, every new spacefaring civilization brought before them, weighed, measured, accepted, or denied. The system had not failed once. And today, in the final entries of my long service, I will tell you exactly why even the oldest warlords of the Concord came to fear a species the Council had refused to seat. I am Kethvun Sa. I am Vilthari. We serve no empire. We record what happened. And what happened to the Concord of Nine is the largest single failure of governance in recorded history. It began with a vote. It ended with an empty chamber. In between, a species the galaxy had thrown away built something the galaxy could not look away from. Part 2. The World Before. The year by human reckoning is 2387. The galaxy is a quiet place. The Concord of Nine has held authority for 14 millennia. 9 species sit on the High Council: the Korath, the Senva, the Drakyun, the Ilmari, the Vone, the Tesseract, the Bren, the Alach, and my own people, the Vilthari. We are the youngest of the 9, seated only 6,000 years ago. We do not vote often. We observe. The Concord is not an empire, it is a committee. It does not conquer, it approves. It does not invade, it schedules. Every new spacefaring species in the galaxy must present itself before the Council. The application is standard, 64,000 pages. Biological surveys, cultural profiles, technological audits, ethical frameworks, projected developmental timelines. The Council reviews. The Council votes. Most applicants are denied on first submission. Many never reapply. The few who are accepted receive trade access, technology sharing, protected status. The rest are catalogued and left alone. Sector boundaries are drawn around them. They are not interfered with. They are not assisted. They are filed. This is the system. It works. It has always worked. In 2387, a small convoy of vessels enters Council space from the outer spiral. The ships are crude, chemical fuel, pressurized hulls, radio transmissions in the clear. The species inside calls itself human. They have come, they say, to apply for Concord membership. The Council convenes. The application is reviewed. 64,000 pages, completed by hand, in a language the translation systems have to invent grammar rules for. The biological surveys show a fragile, mammalian, oxygen-breathing species with a life expectancy of less than a century. The cultural profile shows 17 active political units, 3 recent armed conflicts, and no unified planetary government. The technological audit shows fission reactors, ballistic projectiles, and a single working faster-than-light prototype held together with what the engineers describe as redundant safety wishes. The vote takes 4 minutes, 9-0, application denied. Reasons cited: evolutionarily premature, developmentally incomplete, not viable for conquered standards. The human delegation is informed by message buoy. There is no meeting. There is no appeal process. There is a sector designation, 7 Delta, outer spiral containment classification minor. A boundary line is drawn around their home system and the 80 light-years surrounding it. They are instructed not to expand beyond it. They are told they may reapply in 1,000 standard years. The convoy returns home. The file is shelved. The matter is closed. For 90 years, the Council does not check on Sector 7 Delta. There is no reason to. The boundary holds. No human ships appear in conquered space. No distress calls. No trade requests. The sector is silent. The Council assumes the humans are still there, still fragile, still arguing among themselves. The Council assumes wrong. In the sublevels of the Council archive, the human application sits in a cabinet. Every standard year, a clerk pulls the file, reviews the sector reports, and stamps the cover with the same 6 words. Application under review, status pending. The stamp is automatic. The clerk does not read the reports. No one reads the reports. This is the part of the story where, in human storytelling, something dramatic happens. A villain laughs. A prophecy is spoken. A door is broken down. In our story, nothing happens. The Council goes about its work. The 9 species trade and legislate and convene and vote. The galaxy turns. 90 years pass in committee minutes and procedural updates. And in the outer spiral, in a sector no one is watching, something is being built. Part 3: The Solution. I have spent 40 years of my service studying what humans did in those 90 years of silence. The records are extensive. Humans, it transpires, document everything. They did not build weapons first. This is the detail that every Council historian misses. They built factories. In 2391, 4 years after the rejection, the first orbital foundry comes online above the human homeworld. It is called the Callaway Shipyards, named for the engineer who designed it. It is not large. It produces hull plating, structural members, fuel tankage. Nothing weaponized. Nothing prohibited. By 2395, there are 6 Callaway shipyards. By 2400, there are 40. In 2402, the first Rays foundry opens in the asteroid belt of the human home system. It refines metals at a scale the Council has not seen attempted in 9,000 years. The conquered shut down operations of that scale long ago. They were judged inefficient. The Rays foundries are not inefficient. They are voracious. By 2410, the human home system is producing more refined alloy per standard year than the combined output of 3 Council species. The Council does not notice. The clerks do not read the reports. Here is what makes the human approach different from anything in conquered history. A Korath warship takes 40 standard years to design, 12 to construct, and is expected to serve for 6 centuries. A Dracune dreadnought takes 60 years from concept to commissioning. A Senva mine fleet is grown from biological templates over a full century. The first human warship, the industry class, is designed in 14 months. The first hull is laid down in 18. The first vessel commissions in 2421, 34 years after the rejection. It is not a good ship. The crew quarters are cramped. The reactor shielding is insufficient. The targeting systems fail in 3 of every 10 engagements during shakedown trials. The vessel is, by every conquered standard, a failure. The humans launch a second one 6 months later, with corrections. Then a third, with more corrections. By 2425, they have launched 14 industry-class dreadnoughts, each one better than the last, each one built on the lessons of the previous. The conquered shipyards have not completed a single new vessel in the same period. By 2440, there are 600 industry-class dreadnoughts in service. There are 1,100 lighter combatants. There are 9,000 armed merchants. The Conquered, in the same 53 years, has commissioned 23 new ships, total, across all 9 member species. The Callaway shipyards now number 2,400. The Ray's foundries consume entire asteroid fields. The humans have not stopped building. They have not paused to assess. They iterate in public. They scrap working designs to test better ones. They commission ships knowing the next variant will be obsolete before it leaves the slip. And here is the detail that, when I first read it in the archive, made my mandibles still for a long moment. They never built a single weapon the Council had prohibited. They did not need to. They built 10,000 weapons the Council had never thought to prohibit. Kinetic accelerators that fire tungsten slugs at a fraction of light speed. Drone swarms that coordinate through encrypted bursts. Boarding craft that breach hulls with shaped charges and deploy combat engineers in under 9 seconds. Logistics tenders that refuel a fleet in flight without slowing it. None of these weapons existed in the Conquered Prohibition Codex. The Codex was written 14,000 years ago. It had not been updated. It had not needed updating. In the sublevel archive of the Council homeworld, the human application file is now 4,000 pages thicker than when it was first filed. Clerks have been appending sector reports for 90 years. The reports are not read. The cover of the file still reads in stamped Conquered script, application under review, status pending. Part 4, First Contact Case Studies. The first time a conquered species encounters a human fleet in the open, it does not go well for the conquered. The year is 2447. Warlord Tavrak of the Korath leads a punitive strike into the edge of Sector 7 Delta. The humans, the Korath claim, have been expanding beyond their assigned boundary. The claim is true. The humans have expanded by 400 light-years in every direction. They have done so quietly, without announcement, settling moons and asteroid belts and dead worlds the Council had catalogued and forgotten. Tavrak brings 12 Korath heavy cruisers. The Korath have never lost an engagement they chose to enter. Their hulls are layered in ablative ceramic. Their gunners are bred for the role across 9 generations. The cruisers are, by Conquered measure, the second most powerful warships in the galaxy. Tavrak's lead vessel makes contact with a human patrol at the edge of the disputed zone. The patrol is 4 industry-class dreadnoughts and 16 support craft. Tavrak orders his cruisers to weapons range and broadcasts the standard Korath warning. The warning is 2,000 years old. It has never been ignored. The human commander, Captain Idris Okonkwo, responds in clear Conquered trade language. The transcript survives in our archive. I have read it many times. Korath vessel, you are in commercial transit lane Delta 9. Please file a passage manifest or divert to coordinates we will provide. There is no fee for diversion. There is a substantial fee for obstruction. Tavrak does not respond. He orders weapons free. The engagement lasts 41 minutes. The Korath cruisers are not destroyed. They are surrounded, disabled, boarded, and inventoried. The human boarding teams catalog every weapon system, every officer, every classified document on each cruiser. They do this in under 3 hours. The Korath crews are released unharmed, given enough fuel to return home, and provided with a written invoice for the cost of the engagement. Tavrak refuses to pay the invoice. He returns to Korath space and demands the Council declare war. The Council convenes. The session lasts 11 days. At the end of 11 days, the Council issues a formal demand that the humans cease military expansion and submit to a review. The humans do not respond. Tavrek dies of natural causes 7 years later, having never recovered his standing. The second encounter is more careful. In 2451, Mindspeaker Isin of the Senva sends a diplomatic probe to the human home system. The Senva do not fight directly. They negotiate. They are the finest negotiators in the galaxy. They have ended 4 wars by conversation alone. The probe carries a single mind envoy and a delegation of 7. It is received politely at a human orbital station. The envoy is given accommodations. Meetings are scheduled. The Senva, who experience time differently than corporeal species, settle in for what they assume will be a century of careful talks. The talks take 14 months. They are not negotiations. They are intake interviews. The humans want to know everything. Senva biology, Senva commerce, Senva internal politics, Senva military doctrine. The envoy answers because the questions seem polite, because the humans seem genuinely curious, because no Senva in 14,000 years has been asked these questions by a non-council species. When the envoy returns home, the Senva government realizes what has happened. They have been catalogued. The humans now know more about the Senva than the conquered council does. 3 months later, the humans open a trade office on the edge of Senva space. They offer goods the Senva did not know they wanted. They accept payment in materials the Senva had thought worthless. By 2454, the Senva economy is partially dependent on human trade. The third encounter ends the question entirely. In 2456, Imperator Veshkor of the Dracune brings the dreadnought Voidrath into the disputed zone. The Voidrath is a conquered first-rate vessel, 8 kilometers of armored hull, 40,000 crew, weapons systems that have stood unchanged for 2,000 years because no improvement has ever been required. The Voidrath engages a human task force. The engagement lasts 90 minutes. The Voidrath is captured intact, not destroyed, captured. The humans put their own crews aboard, repaired the damage during the tow, and added the ship to their own fleet. They renamed it the Liberty. They sent Veshkor a written notice of the change, with the proper conquered forms attached, filed in triplicate. This is the pattern that emerges over the next decade. Every conquered species that engages humanity loses. Not in fire, in arithmetic. The humans do not destroy their enemies. They absorb them. They take the ships. They take the cargo. They take the personnel. They file the paperwork. There are no human victories celebrated in song. There are only updated ledger entries. In the Council Archive sublevel, the human application file now exceeds 80,000 pages. The cover still reads, Application under review, status pending. Part 5, The Mechanics of Domination. Let me describe, in the precision our archive demands, what actually happens when a human fleet engages a conquered force. It does not begin with weapons fire. It begins with sensors. Human dreadnoughts carry sensor arrays of a sophistication the conquered did not believe possible in a vessel under construction time of 2 years. Where a Dracune dreadnought tracks 40 targets across a single light second, a human industry class tracks 4,000 across 6 light seconds, sorted, prioritized, and assigned to specific gun crews before the Dracune commander has finished issuing his first order. The conquered doctrine of engagement assumes that a battle is a conversation between 2 fleets. Maneuvers are made, responses are observed, adjustments are calculated. A standard conquered engagement between 2 well-matched forces takes 9 to 14 standard days. It is, in the old sense, an exchange. Humans do not exchange. The first phase is saturation. Within the first 6 minutes of contact, A human fleet has flooded every conquered sensor in range with so many target solutions that the enemy's targeting computers begin to discard data as unreliable. Drone swarms deploy in the thousands. Decoy emissions blanket the spectrum. The conquered commander, looking at his displays, sees not a fleet but a storm. He does not know which contacts are ships and which are illusions. The second phase is logistics denial. While the conquered force struggles to identify targets, human auxiliaries strike the support train, fuel tenders, ammunition haulers, repair tenders. The vessels the conquered considers non-combatants. Every conquered doctrine forbids targeting them. Human doctrine considers them the primary objective. A conquered fleet without fuel is a museum exhibit. The third phase is the boarding cycle. Human boarding craft are small, fast, and shielded against point defense. They breach enemy hulls with shaped charges and deploy combat engineers, not infantry. The engineers do not fight. They cut. They cut life support. They cut weapons control. They cut power to the bridge. A conquered cruiser, internally severed, cannot fight back. It can only wait. The fourth phase is administrative. This is the phase that most disturbed me in my early reading because I did not understand it. I understand it now. While the conquered vessel is dead in space, internal systems severed, crew sealed in their compartments, the human commander files paperwork, damage assessments, crew rosters, cargo manifests. The captured vessel is logged into the Terran Combine registry before its original crew has finished surrendering. By the time the boarding officers reach the bridge, the ship has a new designation, a new captain assigned in absentia, and a projected refit schedule. The complete engagement averages 94 minutes. 94 minutes from first sensor contact to filed acquisition report. In my early years of study, I asked a human archivist I had befriended why the paperwork was filed so quickly. Why not after the battle? Why not after the prisoners were processed? He told me, because if you wait, you forget what you did, and if you forget, you can't do it better next time. I have thought about this answer for 30 years. The humans were not fighting battles. They were running iterations. Every engagement was a prototype. Every prototype was scrapped, learned from, improved. By 2460, the human fleet that engaged conquered forces was unrecognizable from the fleet of 2447. Every system had been redesigned. Every doctrine had been rewritten. Every officer had been replaced or retrained. The conquered fleets that fought the humans in 2460 were, in every meaningful sense, the same fleets that had fought them in 2447. The conquered had not iterated. The conquered had not needed to iterate in 14,000 years. This is the part of the record I want my fellow Vilthari to understand most clearly. The humans did not win because they were stronger. They were not stronger. A single Dracune dreadnought, in hull tonnage and weapons throw, exceeded any human vessel ever built. The humans won because they were faster, not in flight, in cycle. They could think, build, and adjust in months what the conquered did in centuries. By the time the council convened a session to discuss the human problem had changed 3 times. The council was fighting a species that no longer existed by the time the meeting began. Part 6, The Hunters. I want to record, while my memory holds, the names of the 3 humans who broke the conquered, not because they were heroes. Humans do not generate heroes in the way the conquered species do. They generate operators, but these 3 are the ones the archive remembers. The first is Admiral Marcus Calloway. He was the grandson of the engineer who designed the first orbital shipyard. He had never intended to command a fleet. He was, by training, a logistics officer. In 2452, when the humans formed the unified Terran Combine Navy, Calloway was assigned command of the First Fleet because no one else had the patience for the paperwork. He treated war as a supply problem. He never spoke of victory or defeat. He spoke of throughput, capacity, lead time. When the conquered declared the formal blockade of Sector 7 Delta in 2454, Calloway broke it in 11 days, not by force, but by routing his supply lines through trade partners the conquered had not catalogued as potential allies. He turned a blockade into a customs inspection. The conquered ships sat in position for 3 years, watching human freighters pass them on routes the blockade did not cover. Calloway never engaged a conquered warship directly. He did not need to. He starved them. By 2462, 11 conquered task forces had been recalled because their supply chains had been quietly absorbed into the human commercial network. Their crews had not fired a shot. They simply ran out of replacement parts. The second is Director Yale Rays. She never held military rank. She ran the Rays foundries, inherited from her great-grandfather, expanded into the largest industrial concern in known space. She is responsible, more than any single individual, for the human production advantage. Under her direction, the foundries produced more refined alloy in 2465 than the entire conquered economy had produced in the previous 50 years combined. She ended 3 wars without commanding a ship. The first ended when she announced the foundries would no longer accept Corinth metallurgical contracts. The Corinth economy collapsed in 4 months. The second ended when she opened a foundry on the edge of Essenva space and offered employment to any Essenva willing to relocate. 14% of the Essenva working population emigrated in the first year. The Essenva government sued for peace. The third ended when she refused to sell to any party still recognizing conquered trade authority. 6 of the 9 council species signed bilateral agreements with the Terran Combine within the same standard year, just to maintain access to her supply chain. She never gave a public speech. She never wore a uniform. The archive holds 3 photographs of her in total. She died in 2481 of natural causes in her office, reviewing a production schedule. The third is Captain Idris Okonkwo. He developed the doctrine that finished the conquered. It is called in the human records the close customs doctrine. It is not a military doctrine. It is a commercial one. Okonkwo's insight was simple. The conquered economy depended on a small number of high-value trade routes. Strangle those routes, and the conquered could not pay its fleets. Strangle them with warships, and the council would declare war. Strangle them with customs inspections, and the council would have to convene a procedural review. Okonkwo positioned his squadrons on every major conquered trade lane. He did not fire. He inspected. Every conquered freighter was stopped, its manifest reviewed, its cargo audited, its paperwork filed. The inspections were perfectly legal under conquered trade law, which had been written 14,000 years ago and had never been amended. The inspections took, on average, 11 days per vessel. By 2470, conquered trade had slowed to a crawl. By 2475, 6 member species had withdrawn their long-haul shipping rather than face the inspections. By 2478, the conquered economy was bypassing its own council to trade directly with the Terran Combine. Okonkwo never engaged a hostile vessel. He had the highest commendation count in the human navy. His official combat record lists 0 engagements. These 3, a logistics admiral who never fired, an industrial director who never served, a captain who fought wars with customs forms. The conquered, in 14,000 years, had never faced opponents like these. Their doctrines did not account for them. Their war colleges did not study them. Their council had no procedure for responding to them. In the sublevel archive of the council homeworld, the human application file passed 200,000 pages in 2472. The cover still read, "Application under review, status pending." Part 7, The Death of an Era. The conquered of 9 did not fall in battle. This is the detail the Corinth historians refuse to record correctly. The Dracunes still teach, in their war academies, that the conquered collapsed in the Battle of the Veil Reach in 2479. There was no such battle. The Veil Reach engagement was a customs inspection that lasted 6 hours and resulted in 17 Dracune freighters being escorted to a human port for processing. The Concord fell in committee. By 2476, 6 of the 9 council species had active bilateral trade agreements with the Terran Combine. These agreements bypassed the council entirely. They were, technically, violations of Concord Charter. The council convened to address the violations. The session lasted 4 years. No resolution was reached. The species in question continued trading. The Korath, the Dracune, and the Alich held out the longest. The Korath collapsed economically in 2478, their warlord caste unable to sustain itself without trade access. The Alich signed a bilateral agreement in 2481, citing food shortages caused by their own protectionist policies. The Dracune signed in 2483. I was present at the signing. As a Velthari archivist, I was a permitted observer. Imperator Veshkor, the same commander whose dreadnought had been captured and renamed 37 years earlier, signed the agreement with his own hand. He did not speak. He looked at the human delegation across the table and signed. The room was silent. The human delegate thanked him politely and filed the document in a portable archive. It was the most expensive piece of paper in Concord history. It ended 14,000 years of governance. In 2484, the council convened what was intended to be a formal session to accept humanity's membership application. The motion had been prepared in advance. All 9 member species, even the holdouts, had agreed to vote in favor. The vote was unanimous. The application was approved. The council clerk was sent to the sublevel archive to retrieve the file for the official acceptance ceremony. The file was missing. A search was conducted. 3 days were spent. The file was eventually located in a separate archive, in a section reserved for withdrawn applications. The withdrawal date was 2470, 14 years earlier. A human courier had filed the withdrawal in person, with the proper forms in triplicate. The withdrawal had been processed by an automated clerical system, stamped, and refiled. No member of the council had been notified, because no member of the council had asked. The application the council had just unanimously approved did not exist. I was in the chamber when the discovery was announced. The Korath representative laughed. The Dracune representative did not move for 9 minutes. The Velthari representative, who was my own great mentor, asked the clerk to repeat the dates twice. Then she put her head in her forearms and made a sound I had never heard a Velthari make. The session was adjourned without resolution. The council never convened again. This is how the era ended. Not with a final battle, not with a treaty of surrender, not with the destruction of a homeworld. With a missing file. With a procedural withdrawal that had been processed automatically because no one had been paying attention. The humans, when asked later why they had withdrawn the application, gave a simple answer. They had not needed it anymore. By 2470, they were trading with 6 of the 9 council species directly. The membership would have added obligations without adding access. Their commercial department had reviewed the matter and determined the application had no remaining value, so they had filed the withdrawal. They had not done it as a gesture. They had not done it as an insult. They had done it because the paperwork no longer made sense to maintain. The Concord of 9, in 14,000 years, had never been ended by indifference. Part 8 Legacy. I am old now. My final years are spent in the archive, organizing what we know, what we have recorded, what we have failed to record. The council chamber on the homeworld has been preserved as a historical site. I have walked through it twice. 9 thrones, dust on their armrests, the great voting screen dark. A single document remains on the central table. It is a cargo manifest from a human freighter, filed in 2484, listing the equipment used to formally close the council session. It was left behind by accident. The Preservation Committee voted to keep it where it lay. The humans did not replace the conquered. This is the part of the story that surprises my younger colleagues most. They did not declare an empire. They did not seat themselves on 9 thrones. They did not draft a new charter for the galaxy. They made the conquered irrelevant. Today, the Terran Combine is the largest commercial and military entity in known space. It is not a government in the conquered sense. It is a federation of corporate, civic, and military bodies, organized along supply lines and trade routes, governed by something humans call a constitution which fits, remarkably, in a single volume. The other species adapted. The Korath now manufacture component parts for human shipyards. The Dracune operate as commercial carriers under Terran flag. The Senva run the largest commodity exchange in the galaxy, headquartered on a human station. My own people, the Velthari, do what we have always done. We record. We observe. We do not vote. The human application file is preserved in our archive. It is 400,000 pages now. It was, in the years between the rejection and the withdrawal, the longest continuously updated document in galactic civil service. It includes 97 years of sector reports, 13 formal complaints from council species, 204 diplomatic communications, and a single handwritten note in human script that simply reads, "Thank you for your consideration." The note was attached to the withdrawal in 2470. No archivist has ever determined who wrote it. It is the most viewed document in our public collection. Warlord Tavrak of the Korath, who turned his fleet around at the edge of Sector 7 Delta in 2447, died in disgrace 7 years after the engagement. His personal records were sold to a human historian in 2462 for an amount that paid off his clan's debts. The historian published them. They are required reading in human war colleges. Minespeaker Isin of the Senva, who sent the diplomatic probe in 2451, lived long enough to see his own species join the Terran trade network. He gave his final interview in 2477. When asked what he had learned from his negotiations with humanity, he said, in clear conquered trade language, "I learned that they were not negotiating." Imperator Veshkor of the Dracune, who signed the final treaty in 2483, served as the first Dracune ambassador to the Terran Combine. He held the position for 19 years. When he retired, he requested permission to visit the captured dreadnought Voidreth, renamed Liberty, still in active human service. Permission was granted. He spent 4 hours aboard. He left without comment. He died the following year. Today, when the younger species of the galaxy speak of humanity, they speak of an empire. They speak of fleets, of foundries, of the unbroken century of expansion. They speak of the human capacity for war, for industry, for governance. They do not often speak of the rejection. They do not speak of the 4-minute vote that catalogued humanity as evolutionarily premature. They do not speak of the 90 years of silence in which a species the Council had thrown away built the largest industrial base in the history of the galaxy. They do not speak of the clerks who stamped a file for 9 decades without reading it. We forget this part. We forget that for every species the Council seeded, there were others it dismissed. Most of those dismissed species are still where the Council left them, in their sectors, in their containment zones, in their procedural silence. Only one of them built an empire. The galaxy remembers, though. At the edge of every old trade lane, in every shipyard log, in every archive sublevel, the records remain. The Korath warlords who turned their fleets around. The Senva envoys who returned home catalogued. The Dracune dreadnoughts that were renamed and refit and pressed into service under a new flag. And in the Velthari repository, the document of record, 400,000 pages, the most expensive file in galactic history, application withdrawn, status archived, reviewed by no one. Humanity, the species the Council refused to seat, the species that made the Council unnecessary. And for good reason. End of memoir. recorded in the final year of service of Kethvun Sa, Chief Archivist, Velthari Repository, filed for public access. No restrictions.